countdown and then I'll jump into the podcast. So 3, 2, 1. Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Christian Buddy podcast. I'm joined here with Manuel. How are you today, Di?
Doing great, Kristian. As we were saying earlier, it's it's nice to know the future's looking good. Yeah, you're on your Tuesday. I'm on my Monday night, and but man, I love this beautiful thing called the internet because it connects all of us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you're originally based in Vancouver, and I'm just a bit curious because I haven't really heard about Canada or in the news about coronavirus. And it's a bit of a bad time, but I mean, how is it going down that side?
Well, yeah, we have pockets where it's obviously a little bit more severe, more serious. Like I live in Vancouver, Canada, which is part of British Columbia, and it's on the westernmost portion of Canada. So we're way over on the west coast. So if you're familiar with the United States, Seattle is just south of us, about 2 hours south. Right. And so we're in the Pacific Northwest. It's the rainforest here, as well as the Rockies. Beautiful part of the world. But we've done a really good job. I got to hand it off to our provincial health, the people in charge, because they've done a pretty good job at keeping us fairly stable. So the restrictions, although we've had them, haven't been as severe as other parts of Canada where they're on full lockdown, essential services only. It's definitely much more challenging, and the economy is definitely feeling it nationally. But we just every day there's another business going under, and so it's challenging. I know it's not unique to Canada; it's happening for all of us. But you're part of Australia. How's it been?
Very good. We have we've been through a very strict lockdown, so the cases are quite low. So we're kind of coming out of it at the moment. We're rearing our head at the moment, and it's the vaccine's coming out as well. So there's a lot of positive news on the horizon. So great. I'm happy to hear that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll get out of this. This too shall pass. If I got a riff on Buddha,
Yeah.
Wise guy. You seem to know something about this stuff.
And speaking of Buddha, I want to kind of step into just looking at your socials. You seem like quite a spiritual person. And what does the word meditation mean for you?
A lot of times it just means awareness, right? Yeah. And I know mindfulness is very overused word, sort of as a catch-all. But for me, as meditation's been a part of my life over the years, it's really brought me a lot of more focus inward. Yeah, a lot of times, and gosh, I love the fitness industry, but I also hate it. Okay. The fitness industry, there's a lot of stuff that focuses on the externals or even focuses on the surface, right? Like we're an industry that likes to quantify things. Like how fast can you run a mile? How many push-ups can you do? Like what's your dress size? How much do you weigh on the scale? Like we are so quick to put a number to it, but it's always on things that are outside of us. And so feeling that lopsidedness of my life, a number of years ago, I felt this urge to want to know more. And when I say know more, really just know more about myself and understand some of the motivations, inspirations, or lack thereof that was holding me back. And meditation was just one of those tools that allowed me the ability to become more aware, or at least better conditioned to understand and observe some of the things that I do day to day. And it's the stuff that drives me nuts. And unfortunately, at times drive other people's nuts, especially my wife, like just basic stuff, just the way I sometimes will not engage after being asked a question because I'm distracted by a screen, as an example, and those little things, just being aware and creating new ways of managing myself in certain situations. That's really what meditation's been able to provide me, and obviously I'm sure we can go deeper, but how about yourself? How's it showed up and impacted your life?
Well, it's interesting because I've kind of always considered myself a meditative mind. Like I think some people are more naturally inclined that way. And my personality is quite calm and focused. I like to spend time focusing, reading and things like that. So meditation definitely complements, and in touching on your point earlier about the fitness world, I play competitive tennis, and tennis is partly a mental game, and meditation just helps you to manage your emotions a little bit better, you feel a little bit of anxiety or pressure rising up, and you can acknowledge that and just be present. And that's what I like about meditation for me personally.
Well
So
said. It's so valid. And I think we, meditation, as much as we try to objectify it a little bit and quantify it and even qualify it for people, it's very much a personal experience. Like really, it doesn't get much more personal than meditation, because it's just your breath, your thoughts, your ability to clear your thoughts and be hyper aware of what's going on right now. And so I know it's a different experience for everybody, even though there's similarities and complementary benefits that we all experience, but the way we get there, it's not necessarily a straight path. It doesn't mean you don't take the path. It just means be prepared. What one person experiences may not be what you experience, but there still might be a different shade of gray, so to speak, that you experience in your own way. And I think it's an interesting thing for sure.
now I want to try and qualify. I know you mentioned it's very difficult to qualify and quantify it, but what particular practices do you follow, or how do you meditate?
Yeah. So I've tried lots of different meditations to try to find what one felt most natural to me.
Okay.
Like one that I could feel that I could maintain a consistent routine around. Because I think that's the biggest thing about meditation. Like, you do it once, you're going to reap some benefit. Like you might notice that, oh, my blood pressure goes down. I feel a little bit calmer. That person that just cut me off on the road, I don't feel as like my mind's thinking about that incident from the morning anymore. Like you're able to move past some of those things that maybe would get stuck in your head and bring up all these emotions. And but there is a difference if you have a consistent practice. So I always strive to find something that I could do consistently, but I'll be honest with you. I tried some styles and I found it really challenging to maintain. And so that didn't mean I didn't want to do it. It just meant I had to keep trying different ones. And some of the ones that I've resonated with best, and the one that I've been able to sustain, is like walking meditations,
Wow.
especially
Okay.
out in the woods, in the forest, in the parks. In Vancouver is beautiful. We have something called the seawall, which is this path that goes around basically the circumference of our large city park, and along you can see the ocean in the strait. Just a gorgeous view. And for myself, just getting out, focusing on my breath, focusing on my feet, and just trying to be very, very present in my body while I'm doing that. For me, it works really, really well. I come back from those walks feeling inspired, feeling connected, feeling grounded. So that's worked for me really well. And then other than that, every once in a while, I like transcendental meditations, or more guided meditations, but it's not something I enjoy doing consistently. I just don't find it as calming and as impactful as, say, doing walking meditation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears now, and I want to reflect on your personal life. And just going through your socials, you appear to be in a very good relationship with a nice family, and it seems, just looking at just first impressions, it seems like you're surrounded by a lot of females, as in you've got 2 daughters. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you have two daughters,
16 and 18. Yeah. Two little women now, but
okay.
I like to think of them as little babies still, but they'll correct me very quickly.
So, and one question is, what's it like being surrounded in a house of females, I guess, from that perspective?
Yeah, at times it's proven a little bit challenging,
Okay.
especially as I don't know if you're aware of this, but I mean, they all have these internal clocks, and they're definitely in sync with the moon. And I'll tell you, all 3 of them, there's typically about 1 week out of every cycle that they're all in sync, and it can make for challenging emotions at times. But listen, I have my cycles too. And we joke about that in my household. I have usually there's a period every 30 to 35 days where I just have a couple of days where I feel really low energy. I feel lethargic. I feel unmotivated. And it's funny, you hear some people talk about blue Mondays, right? Like, oh, it's the start of a week. I got this blue sort of feeling. I have a few days every calendar month, typically, where I experience something similar. So we often joke that my time is a little bit out of sync of their time, but we all have our moments every month where hormones and emotions and fatigue seem to just really get amplified. And that's definitely been challenging, adapting and adjusting, and also learning just to realize when they need their space, I give them their space. And when I need my space, they give me my space. And also we have very clear ways defined based on experience of the self-care practices that help us manage those moments, right? And so we try to create the opportunity for those people. Like when I say those, I'm like my daughter Chardonnay is an example. I know her having quiet time by herself to write, to read, to connect with some of her close friends. That is very nourishing for her. And so in those moments, she doesn't want to be around family. She doesn't want us asking her, "Oh, can we help you? Are you okay?" Like she wants some downtime to be by herself. And so recognize where my other daughter, Bree, she gets a charge around being around and in that social setting, doing things that are active with her friends. Yep. She's very athletic and she enjoys that, and that's for her very nourishing and recharging. My wife, she's got a mix of things, but she likes her own space as well. And so we just recognize what are the things that we really need, and we give each other permission to ask for them and then provide it. And that, trust me, that it's not always been that way, but it's something that we've learned over the years. I've been dating my wife now 21 years, and obviously with 2 teenage girls, I've had lots of trial and error. So this is just sort of the state of the union as it stands now.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I'm a still single male, so I haven't yet hit that part of my life yet, but
anytime you want to trade spots, just say when, man. You can give it a trial, a test drive.
Goodness. Oh man. That's great. And I'm curious about your career. Just reading your description on the internet, it says that you're a mentor and you're also a high performance life coach. Mm-hmm. I'm just a bit curious about that because it's not a typical route. Like, it's not a
totally.
Do you mind expanding on that area, please?
Yeah. Listen, I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what I want to do? I want to be a life coach. Yeah. I want to do that. Like, honestly, I didn't come to it naturally, but I think sometimes we just find ourselves in a position where all of a sudden things just naturally start to happen based on our passions, maybe that sense of purpose or how we gain that feeling of fulfillment. Right. And so over the years, things have sort of evolved into that. Let's put it that way. My background though is in the fitness industry. That's where I got started. From the age of about 17, 18 years old, I started coaching and working with people to help them with just making lifestyle changes, but very much using fitness as my primary modality. Because up to that point, fitness is what allowed me to make my own lifestyle change. I was morbidly obese as a teenager. So from the age of 9 to 14, I just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, it wasn't any medical conditions. It was just lifestyle conditions. And me choosing to, I learned very quickly that I could numb certain emotions, feelings, stress, anxiety, the feeling of disconnectedness, and basically wallow in my food. I learned that certain types of foods provided me an instant boost in my mood. And I would feel good in the moment. Obviously, that would fade fairly quickly, which would lead to wanting to eat more or watch more movies or play more video games, which were sedentary lifestyle activities. Couple that with the food and the lack of nutrition I was getting, it happened over 5 years, right? And then I went through a lifestyle transformation. And I say that, and it sounds like a cliche. I just got to a point where I was more afraid of staying on the path that I was currently on than I was of a path that I had no idea how to do it, but I knew it couldn't be any worse than the path I was on. The life I was living, by the time I got to 20, I knew it wasn't going to be any better. So it's like, okay, well, I want to make some changes, but that was scary too, right, Kristian? Like when we find ourselves in a situation, especially when we're facing the unknown, trying to learn something completely new and completely different from what we're accustomed to, there's a lot of fear. But I was less afraid of that than I was the idea of staying as I was. And so that's when I really came to a place where I was like, okay, well, I want to get healthy, and made some changes. Took 20 months. I like to let people know this. It wasn't like a get ripped quick kind of scheme. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I just did the basics. I changed. I educated myself on nutrition and how to fuel myself for uh, the life results that I wanted. And then on top of that, I just started moving my body more regularly, pretty much every day, just moving with a little bit of purpose, trying to elicit a positive adaptation. Stress can be a good thing too. We
Yeah.
need stress to adapt. If humanity didn't have any stresses, we wouldn't be where we are today. That's how evolution works. And so at 17, almost 18, and just to close the loop on your initial question, Kristian, I know it's a long contextual roundabout way I'm getting to my answer here.
Yep.
And believe me, that's the way my mind works at times. I realized that through the conversations I started having with friends of my parents, okay, like they're adult friends, like the parents of the families, like my family friends, like my school friends, they started asking me questions about health and fitness and nutrition. Like, first time in my life that people were asking me for my opinion because they actually wanted help. They saw what I had accomplished over just under 2 years, and they're like, well, clearly you know what you're talking about. The results are proofs in the pudding, as they say. And can you help me? And that was the first time in my life where people asked me a question and weren't just waiting for their chance to respond, right? Like they were literally asking and waiting for me to support them, to help coach and maybe to do
Yeah.
some mentorship. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. And it really rocked my world, because all of a sudden, as I was sharing and delivering value and supporting these people with starting their own journeys for change, I realized, wow, this makes me feel really good. I feel
Yeah.
really connected to this. And I was excited to do it. And so based on that experience, I was like, maybe, and as I learned, there's actually careers with this kind of thing in it. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I mean, I can get paid for doing this stuff that I love to do anyways. And that's sort of what got me started in the coaching and mentorship side of things. But my career, it took a lot of turns, and I got into retail, actually selling fitness equipment and accessories. And over a period of 17 years, a business partner and I grew that company to 8 figures a year. And we spanned all across Canada with e-com, and then we're all across Western Canada with retail stores. So it was, what a journey, incredible experience. But like all experiences, they don't necessarily always last. We change as people, right? We change. And as my passions changed, I realized my career needed to change to match those passions. And so big changes happened, and eventually emerging as I am now, coaching and mentoring and helping people just get more out of life and get out of their own way.
Wow, that's a interesting history.
It's a
And
lot there to unpack. I know
it's a
it's
lot to
26
unpack.
years, right?
All right.
In about 8 minutes.
That's fantastic. That's great. And I guess for people listening who are kind of stuck in that mindset of they feel like they can't lose the weight or they can't get motivated, is there any advice that you can give to them, or any practical steps to help them?
And I know, Kristian, you have a lot of thoughts and experience on this too, especially being an elite athlete. Like you're wired differently, right? Like you are, like you've grown up probably being fairly active your entire life. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it's a fair statement. Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, to get to that level, I imagine there's been some consistent effort.
Yeah.
And for those that have experienced that kind of growth, if you will, in life, in any one specific endeavor or modality, it's amazing because you learn some big life lessons going through that experience. And if you're someone that's more like me, that hasn't necessarily had that level of focus or consistency in one area, it can be hard to just know what other skills to develop to support more of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that you can take that athletic mindset, that discipline that you've learned, and you can apply it to any field that you want because you've learned that skill set, right, through experience. And so I wanted to qualify that a little bit because, depending on who I'm speaking to, the answer I give may be slightly different. But things that I found worked for me was getting super simple with it. I think we're always looking for the magic bullet, right? Like, if I could buy a pill that would make me instantly fit, would I buy it? Well, yeah. And so would a billion other people, but it doesn't come to us that way. And lasting change doesn't happen that way. It's the stuff that we have to fight for, and usually makes the greatest amount of change and impact, and we can sustain it after the fact. But you've probably heard the idea of connecting with our emotional motivations, right? Those, whether they be intrinsic or extrinsic, but it's figuring out exactly why do you want to make the change to begin with. Like, people come to me, I'm like, I want to lose 30 pounds. Oh, great. Why? Well, I just want to be fitter. Okay. Why? Well,
Yeah.
when I take my shirt off at the beach, I'm embarrassed. I hate the way I look. Women that I coach, it's like, when I look in the mirror, I don't know who it is. And the person I see, I hate. Like, that to me is so hard and not a place to be, because I can relate to that very much so. When I was 14, looking in the mirror and thinking, man, life would be a lot easier if I wasn't here anymore. That's an awful place to be. No one deserves to be there. And so it's getting to the root of what are the emotional connections to the reason why you want to change to begin with, and getting really honest and clear on that. Because there's lots of things we can do. There's tons of stuff. Like, I mean, there's so many things, but
Right.
the basics is learn how to fuel yourself to thrive rather than just simply nourishing yourself to survive. And then on top of that, learn how to move your body. We've all been gifted this amazing thing called the human body, and our bodies are very diverse, but they're also very, well, it's untapped, right? Like, think about all the cool things we can do. Like, your body is a prime example. I mean, you're conditioned for your sport, which is tennis, right? Like, you do a lot of things probably to continue to allow you to excel in that sport. Well, if you want to excel in life, what are the things that you need to do? And I think if people look at the life they're living and the life they want to continue living for the next 20, 30, 40 years, you can start to understand what parts do you need to reinforce, right? Where's my weak links here? And then just start to do some stuff to build it. I mean, it's not rocket science. I'm sorry if the answer seems vague. That's not my intention, but I realize there's lots of different people that are probably listening to this.
Yeah, it's not a straight, I guess it's not a straightforward answer or straightforward question to ask. But yeah, life's complicated, and I've kind of been curious in that life coach area, but I've kind of never known how to reach out into that area. Because I'm currently working in IT at the moment, so yeah, that's my 9 to 5 at the moment. I mean, it's not something that I definitely see myself doing in the future, but it's just something to support myself financially. But I just like the idea of helping people and giving, that they're trusting you with your opinion, and you have to make sure that you're spot on with what you're saying, and that's a good relationship, a good thing to have. So that's.
Could I ask you a question, Kristian? Like, how would you? And I'm always curious people's answer to this, but how would you differentiate coaching and mentorship? Like, coaching versus mentorship. How would you explain maybe the difference to those two things? Because I believe they are two very different, but there are a lot of similarities and crossover, obviously. But I'm curious, how would you envision those two things being different?
When I hear the word mentorship, for some reason, my father comes to mind. Cool. So I guess mentorship is more of a father figure, or a kind of a guiding force, and a coach is someone that I mean, I've had tennis coaches, and they kind of drill you or make sure your technique's right, and these small things. So yeah, I guess that's my answer. So one's a kind of guiding force, where the other one's like a drill. I don't know, just like a drill sergeant sort of thing. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think you're what you're envisioning based on your past experiences. They tie into that very much so. And I guess why I use the term mentorship a lot more freely than I use coach is I tend to do work in areas that I had personal experience in. So it's things that I've actually worked through or overcome, and various challenges. Like, I live with an autoimmune disease. It's chronic. I've had to adapt my lifestyle based around that, overcoming obesity, having kids, having a 21-year marriage that's still just as good as it was on day one, also overcoming alcohol as well as narcotics abuse. So you can imagine I've got a lot of crap I've been through. So I tend to attract people, but I also like to work with people that maybe are dealing with similar struggles. Maybe not
Yeah.
exactly the same, but similar. And because I can mentor them a little bit more, and I can sort of point out some things that I felt were really, really good for those types of situations that I found myself. And so it is a different approach, right? Like when you mentioned your dad, I mean, it was beautiful. I felt myself just get some goosebumps because I think that's no one said that to me before when I've asked that question. No one said, "Oh, I think my dad," right away. And it's like, but that father-son relationship or a mother-daughter relationship or even a father-daughter, like it doesn't matter. It's that parental individual in our life.
Yeah.
They try to mentor us because one, they try to shield us and protect us from making their mistakes, right? But also they can say, hey, you remember, I've been down this path before. I've done that. And here's what I found work best. Here's some things to keep in mind of. So it's a little bit different where you're right. A coach might work you through a series of exercises, drills, start questioning on your nutrition. If you're an athlete, like how are you nourishing yourself? What are you eating? How are you replenishing? How's your recovery going? So it may not be as specific to what you're working on at times, you know, but there might not be personal familiarity to what they're coaching you through. Like if you had Andre Agassi as your coach, it'd be a little bit different because he'd probably also mentor you or talk to you a lot about the mindset that's required to play at that level. Like it's just a different type of relationship. He'd probably be able to coach you just as well as the next coach, but there's insights that he can provide that potentially your coach may not be able to. And so I think it's important to differentiate between the two because sometimes I feel that people just need mentorship. They don't need a coach, and vice versa. You maybe don't need a mentor. Maybe you've got all that guidance. Now you need to get really good in a specific skill or you need help learning a new talent or a new way of doing something to be happier, more fulfilled, more joyous, whatever. So it's really understanding how those two things differentiate because I just think they're interchanged so loosely nowadays.
Wow. All right. And I've got something. Hopefully, this is a little bit a bit comedic, a bit funny. I've been going through your Instagram again, and I want to kind of I have to do some research on my guests, and I've got a few pictures that I want to show, and I'm just out of curiosity. I'm not, I guess, for any bad reason. I'm just curious about the story behind these images, and
Yeah, sure.
I'm just gonna share my screen. All right, let me know.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So
Nice.
yeah, this is a cool Ep. Like I'm just curious about what's that thing on your head.
Yeah, so it's by a company called, I don't know if they say Wavy or Wavi. It's depends. I've heard two different pronunciations of it, but it's WAVI, and they're based in the United States, and it's super cool because it's basically an EEG test, right?
Okay.
Like so, it measures your brain waves and brain activity. But what's super cool is these guys go deep with this type of technology, and they've done so many studies, so many different types of minds have they been scanning. But they've created a series of tests that can literally figure out what kind of wavelengths are you really good at naturally dialing in and leaning into, like what is your primary frequencies, but also your ability to focus, your ability to stay on a task at times. Like there's all these series of tests that they took me through, and it took about 20 minutes to do all these tests with the functional medicine guys that I work with. And it was just really interesting because you can establish a baseline. Right.
Okay.
And with these guys, we go deep, like on, I do like vitamin D3. I do my omega profiles, all my hormone profiles, full blood workup. We did our DNA testing, 2 different types. Like these guys take all these data points, put them together, and then they add in a couple of these other pieces, like the EEG tests, because then they can get a really complete profile view of where you're at now. And based on that, like most biohackers like to do, it's like, how can we get just a little bit more over here? How can we get a little bit more here? Or in my case, we saw that my omega-6 profile versus my omega-3 profile was way out of ratio. Like, and for those that are unaware, omega-6s, if you have too much of that, usually it's a sign that you have a lot of extra inflammation in your body. We all know too much inflammation, not a good thing, especially for somebody like me that has an autoimmune disease. Okay. And so this picture right here is just me going in for my brain tests and getting all that gamut of tests done.
Cool. Well, that leads me to the next, I've got one more picture I want to show, which is
Sure.
what you mentioned. So the autoimmune disease, this is pretty shocking. I mean, it seems like a pretty dark period of your life. And what was it like from a what was your mindset at that point in time? Like what?
Well, when this first happened, I'm being checked into the hospital. I had just done a Tough Mudder up in Whistler, and it was the first Tough Mudder in Canada. And I thought, awesome, this is gonna be fun. I'm not a runner, but I like the obstacle. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And I didn't realize there was that much running involved. But the thing is I'm not conditioned for long distances, and my thighs you're atypical back then, atypical CrossFitter, good under short distances, not so good on long distance. And my thighs were chafed. And so here's this thing, you get that runner's chafe on your inner thighs. And come that evening, I started to feel a little bit off. My legs weren't feeling, but I knew I was pretty raw down there. Come the next day, I had this fever breakout. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. I'm feeling really sick. My energy is dropping through the floor. And we're still up in Whistler. And so we rushed back to Vancouver, and I'm like progressively getting worse. And I get to the hospital. They check me in. This is actually the Emerge, and they did some basic blood testing, and my neutrophil counts came back at 0. And for those that aren't aware, neutrophils, your bone marrow, produces a lot of this stuff. It's the part that, especially this time of year with COVID, anybody that's looking to fight off a virus, even like influenza, neutrophils come into play because this helps neutralize bacteria and viruses in our body, especially infection and stuff like that. So I basically don't have any, as the doctors would joke about later, is like, you should just live in a bubble. Live in a bubble, dude. This is right before I left my career and took off traveling with my family for 5 years, and living in a bubble was not an option. So there was a lot of fear because initially, before they diagnosed me with what they believe to be this autoimmune condition, again, they're not 100% sure, but after eliminating everything else, they're pretty sure that's what it is. There's a lot of fear because initially when they were doing bone marrow biopsies, if you don't know what that is, they take a drill, they hammer it into your hip bone, and they extract marrow from your hip bone.
Jesus, that's
it hurts.
Intense. Wow, that's intense.
I had 3 of those done.
Just
to put it into context, right? Like awful, but they were able to eliminate certain things because they were concerned that maybe I had leukemia. And the doctors are just saying, hey, this is what we think it may be. It could be any one of these series of things. And when they mentioned leukemia and different forms of cancer, because that's how my body was responding systemically, I was shutting down. It was pretty scary. I'm not going to lie. And I'm a positive guy. Like I'm biased to optimism. Definitely. Like if I have a bias, that's my preferred one. Yeah. I'd rather look at the glass half full any day, and so that's me in that picture feeling like dirt, but trying to put on somewhat of a happy face. And, my wife's over there and my daughters are coming in, and I'm just like, in that moment, I'm just like, whatever, peace out. I wanted to go to sleep, and I was just like, whatever, because they've been prodding me all day. And the funny thing is St. Paul's, beautiful hospital, great team there, but it's a student hospital. And so they have all these doctors that are basically learning. And I remember groups of the doctors, like 8 of them coming into this tiny little bubble room, right? And the doctor's not even referring to me by name. He's like, oh, and here's this case. And they're like lecturing. And I'm sitting in the bed there, right? I'm like, what is going on here? I feel like I'm on one of those sitcoms on TV, where the doctors are all coming around and talking. And it was just really interesting to be feeling like that. Like just, like I didn't even feel like I was present, and yet they were talking about my condition as if I wasn't in the room. And it was just really weird, right? So just to give more context to that moment, but so you can imagine what I was feeling when that photo was taken.
All right. Were you at the cusp of? Did it ever get to the stage where you're at the cusp of death, or like?
I was. Yeah, in the hospital there was a period there for about 4 or 5 days where things weren't very good. They actually later on after this moved me to the cancer ward. They have a section of the hospital is just for people that are battling various forms of cancers at different stages. But they could put me in isolation in my own room. All the doctors and nurses and care aides have to wear full basically hazmat suits,
Yeah.
because they have to keep infection at bay. So they felt that it was the safest place for me to be in the hospital. But while I was in there, that fever maintained itself for about 4 days. And so they had me on a whack of stuff and like a 24/7 drip of antibiotics, which were super aggressive, which just killed all my good flora, and any good bacteria was decimated in my body, which also had a lot of complications the next few weeks after the fact. But in the moment, yeah, there was a few days there that there was, well, let's just say I was concerned that my life was going to change forever. And I didn't know to what level, and it did. And coming out of it, it shifted me and to look at life very, very differently. And that's also what led to eventually me leaving a career of 17 years, my wife quitting hers. And because I realized, like, geesh, time is precious. I just, because I didn't count on that. I thought I was super healthy. Most doctors, they would look at me and think, dude, what are you doing here? Like when they use the term, you're kind of an enigma. I mean, it's not usually a good thing. They were just like, we don't quite understand. You everything is great. You're super healthy, but right over here, there's this one little thing, but that one little thing took me down. It took me down hard. So just never know, man. Health is a funny thing.
Jeez, I'm quite blessed. I've never really, I've pretty much had a good run, touch wood at the moment.
Yeah, so. Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
But also you're doing a lot of the right things. And I want people to realize that, like I was doing a lot of the right things, but all of a sudden I hit that age and it was early 30s. And even at that time, I didn't drink alcohol, I was on a paleo diet. So I didn't have any refined sugars, I didn't have any dairy. Like I was doing everything I believed to be right. And then all of a sudden this thing came out, that one little scrape on my thighs led to an infection, which my body couldn't battle. And that's what triggered me. And they said I probably had it most of my life, but because of my lifestyle choices, it masked all the symptoms. So they didn't know.
So what's the actual condition? Is it autoimmune disorder or
autoimmune neutropenia? And
is that when the body attacks itself? Or
yes, that's right. It attacks in my case, it attacks neutrophils. So your bone marrow produces lots of that. And if you went for a test, it's probably, and actually because of your athleticism, your white blood cell counts are probably normally a little bit higher, just based on that state of constantly beating your body up. It tricks our body into producing more of these white blood cells, so to speak. And in my case, it was actually a lack thereof. So it meant the harder I trained, I would doubly deplete myself, which would create further complications. And then if you introduce, when my neutrophils are low, and all of a sudden you introduce that extra little stimulus, like a little bit of bacteria, I've got nothing to fight it, like nothing. And so it can overpower me. But some bacteria, it's funny because I have enough that can stave it off, but some of the more aggressive ones, yeah, I have to be really, really careful. Like if I get any bit of a fever, I have to go to the emerge right away. Like they need me checked in to put me on antibiotics. That's how sensitive it is. And again, I'm not looking for any sympathy, any pity. Like it's something that I live with. It's all good, but it's not going to run my life, and that's a mental choice I made a long time ago. And fortunately for me, based on my lifestyle choices, 99% of the symptoms that most people have with my condition don't show up for me. They don't show up, and I like that I want people to take that, to the bank, so to speak, because I find that with a lot of the conditions that people have, there's ways of making it better. There always is. You can make it better. But it takes, as we all know, a little bit of consistency, commitment, and action.
Consistency and action. Yeah, it's funny because I feel like the direction that human nature is going down now with all socials integrated, we're kind of, I know I'm kind of addicted to these socials and like one name comes to mind, David Goggins, like all these, and I guess it's good and bad in a way because there was a stage where I felt like I wasn't doing enough, but it's not a good mindset to always, you feel like you're never good enough. It's not a peaceful mindset. And this is where meditation, I'm going to kind of come back to meditation because I feel like meditation has made me a more of a whole person. And I feel like I'm a bit more grounded and I don't really I'm just happy being myself. And, I see other people accomplishing great things, but you know what? I'm happy with myself. And that's what meditation has done for me. It's made me a bit more centered, a bit more respectful, and yeah, and yeah, I think the fitness industry is, yeah, you probably know all about it. It's a kind of a bit of an aggressive dog eat dog world, I guess.
Can
Yeah,
be. Yeah. Well, especially, I mean, you're at the competition side of that world, right?
yeah,
And as a competitor, I mean, it can be quite aggressive. I mean,
yeah,
it's just the nature of it. You're playing to win, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I believe that's what you're doing. I mean, you're not playing recreationally. you're playing to compete,
yeah,
and so there is definitely a lot of pressure when you add that element in. But hey, man, I've got a good friend, Nick Wood, and he's got a podcast called Life Athletics. But his whole mantra is this idea, like you're playing life to win it. And when you start
yeah,
looking at your life like a sport, you start asking yourself, well, what are the rules of my engagement or game? Like what is the game I'm trying to play? What do I need to do to be the
yeah,
best player I can? And so I really like that metaphor, right? That or analogy, however you want to frame it. But I always think about that. That's why I was saying earlier, your mindset and what you've experienced already in your life, it's a really valuable skill to have.
yeah.
That can be replayed and applied in so many other areas. So I just think it's awesome, man. I'm envious in some ways because that was a skill I didn't fully develop until later on in life. And it's one of those things, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, as a
Yeah.
cliche question goes, but that's a losing battle. We won't go there.
Yeah. Um, what do you think about creativity? Did you have any what comes to mind when yeah,
Well, fun obviously
yeah,
is one of the biggest ones. It's also one of my pillars. I got 5 pillars, and fun is one of them. And like if you're not bringing a smile to your face or someone else's at least every day, well, there's probably some room for improvement. And I find that creativity is that outlet for fun.
yeah,
Often when we're being creative, I always equate it similar to that feeling of gratitude. As they say, like when you're really truly feeling grateful, and that's how I like to end my meditation practices, is usually reflecting on what am I really grateful for right now in my life, like right now, present day, what am I grateful for? When you're in a feeling of gratitude and really feeling connected to that gratefulness that you have for whatever those elements are, like your family, your significant other, your ability to just be healthy, like these foundational pieces that are so important, because as soon as you take those away, you realize how big of a hole it may leave behind. And so that sense of gratitude, it's awesome, because when you're feeling grateful, there's no room for any other emotions.
no,
Like try to be angry when you're grateful. Like it doesn't happen, right?
yeah,
and so I find often with creativity, when I'm doing a creative exercise, like something that's really tickling that fun part of my brain, I I don't have room for anything else. Like I just feel very much in flow. And I think there's lots of different ways people can tap into that. For me, I really enjoy writing. I enjoy speaking, like giving talks, and being creative on the fly when I meet new people, and connecting. That to me, it allows me to exercise or condition that one part of my creative brain. And so that's what comes to me. I mean, what about you? What comes up for you?
probably first thing drawing.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, just being in a state of awareness, and it's like you said, it's very difficult to have a different emotion when you're in that creative state.
yeah.
But I feel like society or the modern template is that maybe we should be pushing creativity even more, because this 9 to 5 mindset is all about I guess stifling in some cases it stifles the creativity, the creative
Mm,
mind. And I think it's good just to sit down and be quiet and just be with your own presence, and whatever comes to you in that state, just go with it. And um, it's an awesome feeling. It's
yeah.
great. It's awesome.
Well, I think it's that. idea I think a lot of us believe, and I know I've been of the mindset that believes this as well, is that at least in the past, I used to believe that having a passion and having a purpose didn't always align as much as we wanted them to align, right? Like, and what I mean by that is, especially when it came to career, it's like, well, this is what I need to do to create the money, all right, or the wealth that I need to do the things I want to do. Is this a stopgap, or can I somehow tap in and make my passions more aligned with what it is I do day in, day out for my vocation, for my job, say? And so that's something that I always struggle, well, at times I struggle with, but when I really started to try to seek the creative piece or the fun piece of whatever job I did, and in some cases I had to go to my employers, when I was working for others before I became more of an entrepreneur, I would often ask, like, can I support you in these other areas? And those are usually other areas that aligned with things that I really enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
And I find sometimes if you just go to our places of employment and we have that conversation with the people that maybe we're responsible to report to, there may be opportunities to exercise some of those things that we really love to do in our current positions. But unless you have the conversation and you express what you want, it may leave you with that feeling like, I just want to get out of this 9 to 5. And for a lot of the world right now, just to have a job is a pretty special thing. I don't know how your economy's been affected, but I know in Canada and in our neighbors to the south of us, there's the unemployment rates have never been higher, ever, and like for as long as I've been tracking that stuff. So how do we tap into more of our creativity and our passions in the jobs that we do that maybe don't align 100% with those? And so creating that, I think is something that I like to invite people to try to do. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult thing because I definitely want to break out of my 9 to 5 and yeah, but it's kind of, where do you start? Where do you, I guess my life has been consumed at the moment, especially with tennis. So I'm not giving my chance. I'm a deep believer that you really need to put everything into. I can only do one thing at a time. I'm not saying I can multitask. I can only do one thing at a time, and that one thing has been tennis for maybe 5-10 years, and I haven't really given looking at a business or a really good shot. So maybe I should invest more time in that.
I think you're on the right point, on the right path there, Kristian. I mean, if tennis, because that one's obviously got a window, right, of opportunity. And I get that. It needs the focus now, right? Like it needs your best attention. If that's where you want to go and what you want to achieve, then it deserves to have that kind of attention. Because the last thing you want to do is reflect 20 years down the road and think back, man, I only gave it 80%. I don't think that's something that you're going to want to think about, right? So making that your primary thing and your 100% thing, I think that's a great thing. I mean, nothing wrong with that. That's a mindset you need. And moving on from that, well, the skills that you learn being at that level and doing your sport, man, that's pretty transferable. I think there's a lot of industries you could easily work your way into or create a business within. And, but like I said to everybody, what's the rush, right? Like, what's the rush?
Yeah, what's the rush? All right, well, I think I might end the podcast there. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Di. And
likewise, Kristian.
So what time is it 6 p.m. there now at the moment?
Yeah, it's 6:45 right now, Pacific daylight time. And so West Coast, we're just coming up on 7 p.m. You're probably just getting started. What are you, about 9 a.m. or so?
1:46.
Oh, it's the afternoon. Okay.
It's afternoon, yeah.
Nice.
So,
that's cool. You get your whole afternoon to enjoy, my man.
I do, yeah. I know, yeah. Can't wait. All right,
well, thank you. I was going to say, I really appreciate you and what you're creating and putting this out into the world. I think I'm just honored to be here. And so thanks a lot for the opportunity.
No worries. All right. Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Likewise, Kristian. Take care.